we've talked before about custom rods and why they really do have a really big place in our community. And it is, again, one of those things that people look at and go, oh, do I need it? I don't know. But there's something I didn't talk about last time, and we're going to talk about it more this week with Mr. Wes Motsinger of Mots Custom Rods and Reels. So, hope you're ready for a good one. We're going to talk, get some education going. You're listening to Find a Demo Surf Fishing. Let's get after it this morning. I love how this starts the show. Every time for me, it just gets me going. Doesn't matter what's going on, what time it is, where I am. Always good. All right, so like I said, this week we are talking to Mr. Wes from Mots Custom Rods and Reels. Hence, I want you to pay attention to the Reels part because I got some stuff that's going to go on that. I already know it. But rods in general, we've talked about these so many times, and people are like, oh, it's so expensive, I don't need a custom rod. Okay, cool. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I want you to listen to some of the stuff on this one because I think you're going to get your head twisted a little. That's just me. So without further ado, Wes, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. How's it going?
Oh, it's great here, man. I'm still traveling, so I'm not in my normal home of the Panhandle, but it's all good. It's going to be great. You're in North Carolina, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. Right below the state, in Winston-Salem. So we have about an hour from the mountains, and then we're about 3.5 hours from the nearest coast, Wilmington area, and then about 5.5 hours to Cape Hatteras, the point.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're definitely up. You get real winter.
Yeah, we do.
Oh boy, got a little chill just thinking about those. So I know we've already talked a little bit pre-show, and we've talked before about your stuff. Your rods and reels. So before I even get into the questions that we talked about before, I'm actually going to throw one at you that we didn't throw on here. Tell me about the reels portion of your business.
Well, we do, reel service and stuff like that. And we also do upgrading and drags, bearings, do a lot of different, going in and polishing out the gears. We do at one time, that's how we kind of got started, was doing distance casting with, like, say, a Boo Garcia's. So what we're doing is going in and just tweaking on the reels, polishing bearings out, or polishing rub rings out, things like that in the reels. So it comes out to where, you get more distance out of them, things like that. So we did that for several years before we started building rods. So the reel servicing is really a big deal. Reel repair, as long as we get parts, it's been a fiasco since COVID hit. It was getting parts in. But it's been good. So we just do reel repair. And we also do upgrading bearings, and even in bass reels, we do a lot of bass reels, ceramic bearings, things like that. And then putting drags in, just getting them smoother, trying to make them better than what they were from the factory.
Oh man! So with that, when you get them in, let's say if I sent you, just say, hell, we'll just go with a Penn Battle 3. Seems to be the common running across there. What would be the normal? Hey, you know what? I would recommend these upgrades and this service to it.
Honestly, right out of the box, a Battle 3 is probably one of the best reels there is for the bang for the buck. It's already got carbon drags in them. So what we do with those is we just pretty much service them. The best thing on a Penn Battle 3 to do to them is get the old Penn grease out. It's just a little bit too gummy, especially about second season in, it'll start getting tight on you. So what we do is we just go out and put new grease in it. We've got a mixture of greases that I actually come up with over the last couple of years. And so you end up putting I've got 2 different greases I put in, mix them up, and go in and coat everything on the inside, especially saltwater reels. A lot of guys are not going to dunk the reels, but it just keeps that performance still there. It keeps it from getting corrosion issues, say down like 2 years down the road or whatever. So you're actually out of the box. Like when I get a brand new battle, I actually tear it down, pull all the grease out, ultrasonic clean the whole reel, tear everything down, ultrasonic clean, even the screws, everything, then put it all back together with the greases I want in it. And the bearings, honestly, right out of the box on the battles are really, really good. You can't actually get a better reel from Penn for the bang for the buck.
Wow. Okay. So there you go, everybody. Now you know. I didn't even know that. I just figured it was a good reel. Now I'm like, all right, now I feel better. What would you say? I mean, I hate to throw this, but screw it. Let's throw somebody under the bus. What's the worst reel to work on?
Okuma.
Wow, really?
Yeah. They're Okuma, they have some of their higher end stuff is okay, but they're like Avengers, stuff like that. They're just they get to where they got they're really not really meant to be taken apart, it feels like sometimes. And sometimes they're just so cheaply made that they're just not really feasible to even fix because they're, plastic frame reel or something like that, say. But just getting parts from is a disaster as well. Trying to get a hold of anybody, it's it's not the easiest thing to do. So we actually turned down a lot of Kumas. Like I know there's certain guys that actually musky fish up here and up north with an Akumas, big low profile bait casters. They're easy to get parts for and upgraded bearings and things like that in them, but they're the higher end reels. But their lower end stuff is pretty hard to get parts for.
So we've talked about the servicing there. So you can basically, everything out there on the market, you can service it. If you can find the manual on it, you can rip it apart, service it, get it all back together. Pretty much, is that about right?
Yeah. We pretty much any reel on the market we can service as long as like I say we can get the parts for it.
Yeah.
Some are feasible enough to fix. You're like, hey, look, buddy, this thing here is, it's going to be right out of the box. It's going to be $25 to $35 for most saltwater reels to be cleaned. So you got that already right there. So if you had to go and put in gears and say you're already at 50 and say you bought the Penn Fierce for 70, we'll just go buy you a brand new one because it's not going to be worth, the money to be cleaning it and putting it all back together because you've still got a $70 reel, but you've got $60 in it already.
So kind of like, upgrading the car, upgrading the Civic, which you don't really need to upgrade the Civic. It's fine. Just leave it alone.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So let's talk about the upgrade side then. What kind of upgrades do you, I mean, hell, you've taken the wind out of my sails for the battle. So let's just get since you're telling me it's good out of the box, it's like, all right, well, that one's dead. Let's move to, say, Shimano. Spinning reel.
Yep.
What kind of upgrades do you recommend for a reel, or is it kind of dealer's choice? Like, hey, what do you want to do with this?
Really and honestly, the Shimano's are for some reason have went backwards in the last few years on upgrades. So used to the Stratics, they had carbon drags already in them. In the last 10 years, 8 years, I guess, maybe something like that, they had actually went back to the old felt drag washers.
Oh, wow. Really?
Why they would go backwards, but they did. So that's our biggest thing right out of the box. Like as soon as we get one, I put carbons in it, pull the old felts out because the felt they're using as well, even in their Stratics, the Bamfords, stuff like that, they're felt. So what you do is they're so thin that they'll just tear over time. So as soon as you try to pull it out, telling the customer, look, we're going to have to put drags in it. It's going to need drags in it. I can tell you right now because that's 100% chance we're going to put them in because they're just, the felt. It's just, I don't know why they went back to the felt like they did, but they did. And most people, once they get going in that direction, they keep going in it. But Shimano had backed up for some reason.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Well, so with these reels, so we got an upgrade on the drag washers. Any other upgrades you are like, hey, we like doing this. We recommend doing these things.
Yeah, and what on the big thing on on like say your Stratics or your twin spins or twin power stuff like that, what we do is we go in and line rollers on a spinning reel on Shimano's are real notorious for corroding. And what we do is if you take a stock bearing, what I do is I clean it all out, brake clean out the bearing, and then I run it through the ultrasonic cleaner as well to get every bit of grease or grime or anything that's in it, even in it. And then when I go back and I oil it, the best oil we found for saltwater stuff is ReelX. It's made by Corrosion X brand, and it's an oil. It's just so like we're not having no problems really with none of our reels that we've serviced in the past. And I've got a lot of guys up in the Massachusetts area, New Jersey, New York area that swim out the rocks, surf fishing. So they're dunking their reels, and the bearings and those are really staying top. Their top performance even after swimming for the whole season of fishing up there. That ReelX is really helping on the corrosion.
So these guys are all swimming. I mean, that's well, for the South anyway, I guess, or well, hell, in general, it's one of those golden, don't do this, don't dunk your reel, don't get it wet.
Yeah.
And these guys are dropping them in, swimming out to the rocks, because I've heard about that. Then in the Northeast, they got to get out there. But the ReelX Oil is really doing that well on corrosion prevention.
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of, the best thing is honestly to have a good bearing, but to have a good bearing that won't corrode. It's good stainless steel, good grade of stainless steel. But we're really seeing it even in the Shimano's because their line rollers and their bearings, even across the board in the Stratics or any of them, are kind of a little bit subpar. But we're seeing a good results out of that stuff. I got a lot of guys in Florida that we do stuff for. Quite a few guys at American Tackle that sells, we do line repair, reel repair for them.
So with bearings needing to be done with these ones, and you're working through the oil, so the ReelX Oil is your primary go-to, but it does a bunch of corrosion prevention and really just holds up to all the elements.
It really does. Just the salt water, even the fresh waters too, but I mean mostly the salt water you're seeing the problems with in the bearings, but that Corrosion X is really that good of a oil.
Okay. So we've got upgrades there with the reels. What any knobs or anything like that you other do with those? You got the bearings you already talked about, but is there anything else you recommend upgrading on reels?
Yeah, we can do knobs as well. We don't do many of them because of just the problems we've had getting stuff in here lately. And then like we were trying to buy American made stuff, but a lot of companies went out of business. And then second, then you're having to wait for stuff coming out of China, and that's taking forever to get anything through shipping anymore. So we've kind of limited ourselves on just bearings and drags, and because of this, just making it simple for everything we got to do anymore.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. We've upgraded on those ones. How often do you recommend people send you a reel to be serviced?
Well, if and a person can fish and they know, like, okay, well, how much did I use it? Did I use it, 3 times this past year, or did I use it all fall, or all sand? So, if you're really fishing, over 2-week period, the reel needs to be cleaned good every year, just to keep the, keep everything in well working order in it. Second, if you're only fishing a few times a year, for like say a week or something, I mean, you don't have to bring that thing in. If you only fished, in the afternoons after you went out there on the beach for the summer at the beach and you ain't down there all the time, then it don't have to be cleaned every year. Just spray it off when you're done, obviously, and you're good to go. But if you're really doing some hard fishing every year, I mean, we do them once a year for the guys up in the New England area, obviously because they're swimming out or whatever they may be doing, taking waves on all the time, standing out in the surf. So we like to keep those going, and we like to have those every year, especially, when it's up there, obviously it's the middle of winter for them. So what we do is we go through their reels. We got several guys that bring in, like they're sending their Van Staals or Tsunami Saltexes, Slammers. So we just go through them every year and keep them in top performance so they're ready to go when it comes spring.
Nice, man. So what's about the normal turnaround time if, hey, I'm going to send you a reel? Because that's obviously I'm not going to drive to North Carolina and everyone's going to have to send them to you. What's about the normal turnaround time for your schedule's open? Hey, all right, I got a reel. I'm going to break it apart and I'm going to clean it.
Right now, we're at a 4-week turnaround time, just because we got so many in, and plus custom rod orders, and plus our production line of surf rods and inshore rods. So it's about a 4-week turnaround.
It's coming. So if you guys, yeah, that's what we do. About what's the approximate, or hell, I don't even know if I should ask this because I mean, come time, but I mean, if I'm thinking about, hey, I need to get my reel serviced by you, what's the range I'm looking at for a full servicing?
Full servicing, like say your Penn battles, things like that, we do them at 25, because they're a really simple reel, not too complex. You get into static stuff like that, we go up to 30 35 to depending on what it's needing. Like if it's really really crazy dirty, then it's usually like $5 extra for excessive dirtiness. But most of the time it starts off at 25 for most of your pins, your slammers and the new slammers and the new spin fishers. We're doing 35 on those just because of the complex of the drags in those as well. They're just a little bit more harder to go in, and because they got 2 drag systems in those spools. So what you got to do is you go in. That's another big deal, is getting all the pins from California. We put that in the drags on the carbons, and you're ready to rock and roll.
Okay, so we've got all the upgrading things. We got those pieces there. And then we've got shipping it in, so the price point for all that stuff that needs to happen. All right, so
Yeah.
you had a good segue there. So let's talk about the rods. You make everything. You make inshore. You make surf rods. What else are we? What else am I missing in the categories there?
So every once in a while we'll do a whole 30 rod set for a boat, that fish, like say big rock stuff like that. We've had some customers that's we've done that for. We also do fly rods as well for even mountain trout, here in North Carolina. So we don't do many of those as much as we do the surf stuff. Our surf stuff's where the money's at. So we just stick with that and the inshore. That's your two best bets.
I've seen only a couple custom boat rods, and that was on a party boat, which I was surprised they had about those.
It's almost like they have the boat. I've done them in like a baby blue and a navy blue, and say, or royal blue. And say their boat's that color, so they want it to match to it. You know what I mean? And say the whole boat is white, but then they've got those like the name and Carolina blue, and then the bottom section of the boat's royal blue. So what we'll do is we'll match that rod to where it looks exactly like the boat, and that's pretty fun. I like doing sets like that.
I bet that is, man, because it's that artistic added challenge right there too.
Yeah, and you've just got to repeat. That's another thing. Like, you'll see guys that'll do like sets, and there's some very really good guys out there do sets as well that will have every rod in, like say a 20 to 50 rod or whatever it may be, but every one of them is exactly the same. The cork length's the same, or whatever they want to put as grips, if they're using foam or if they're using cork or whatever it may be. Every piece is exactly the same. And that's what you got to have. Especially these guys, it's got a brand new Paul Mann or something like that, or a Viking. They want the best, looking rods. They got a $4 million boat over here. They don't want to have a bunch of stuff that don't match.
Right. Makes sense. I mean, and for a penny and for a pound.
Yeah.
So what got you into rod making?
I couldn't get the rods I wanted. I was actually, at the time, this was probably 12 and maybe 13 years ago now, 14 years ago. What we done was I was in the bass fishing at the time pretty heavy, and I was also in the inshore fishing pretty heavy too. So I was fishing bass tournaments here in the North Carolina Central area, and then we were fishing down at the coast a lot too for trout. And I wanted a 7.5-foot rod that I just couldn't find. That I wanted to make where it would cast just a 1/4 ounce or 1/8 ounce jig for speckled trout, the sound, or and also for bass fishing, throw in like light little crankbaits, like a shad rap, Rapala shad raps. So actually, that's how I got going in it, and I came out with got a blank or two and tried them out, started messing around, and then next thing you do a couple, and you're like, oh, let's try this, and you think, well, back then I was like, oh, I'll save money building my own rods, and that never happened. 'Cause, you really don't need, and the next thing you know, you just keep growing and growing and growing, and just keep trying to, make yourself better at everything that you were doing. Every rod, you try to make yourself better than what you were the time before. And every day you're still learning, even to this day. If you're not learning, you ain't living.
Yeah, true story right there. That's half my motto for this show.
I like letting the customer pick his colors, and I like, then taking those colors and coming up with a scheme. I really like theme type rods. A guy will say, hey, like I just had one the other day that actually just got posted. But it was it's one of our 8.6 metal rods that we use for, say, for blues and obbies and Spanish, stuff like that. Well, he ended up wanted a color scheme of the 80s, and he shot me a picture of this thing from the 80s kind of deal. And so we took those colors and put them all together and came up with a wrap, for decorative wrap and the guide wraps, and matched it to the T. Man, he was, that's my deal, is when the customer comes in and says, man, that's exactly what I was asking for. Like, that's it. I like getting in, not getting in their head, but getting in there trying to figure out where they want to go with this. Some customers, they're like, well, just do whatever you want to do. And I'm like, nah, you're going to have to pick the colors. All black, because that's all I wrap mine at, because I don't like bling out there. I just like it all black. I'm wrapping something that's 3 days before I have a tournament or fishing somewhere, trip somewhere, so I'm like wrapping a rod 3 days before. So we're like, we're going to do it black and we're going to go fishing, don't worry about it. So it's usually it. And I'm horrible at picking out colors for myself, because I've got so many colors. I'll start wrapping, I'm like, I don't like this, and rip it off and try something else.
Okay, so the customer being the driver really gets that's your happy right there. So there's a lot of fun that comes with that.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say that. I mean, you're getting a custom rod. My brain says, if I'm getting a custom rod, it's got to be custom top to bottom, because this is my rod. And I am definitely, I mean, I hate to admit it, but we're in counseling right now. Let's talk about this. I'm a people pleaser a lot of times, so on that same one, I get it. Like, oh, you just pick. Like, look, you're going big here. Come on, get in the game. I totally understand where you're going with that. What is the most tedious or difficult part about making a rod?
For me, it's you got to do like color changes. So you've got like 2 or 3 different colors that you're wrapping in that same wrap. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to have those colors hid underneath, so nothing shows through, so it's all looks professional, but trying to make everything come together. So you have like all your thread that, where connections come together is on the bottom side of the rod, but you try to make even that connection being on the bottom, you want it to look perfect. You have no over wrapping of stuff, making sure it looks exactly the same, no gaps in your thread. That's where I really focus on, doing the best job on.
What do you like better? Do you, because I'm guessing you do cork, you probably do heat shrink and wrappings like that. Is there a specific wrap that you personally really like using?
Yeah, what we do is we got this, and it's on a lot of my rods in the on the website too that we're selling, is a heat shrink that's over top of the blank. Obviously, we heat shrink down to, but underneath it is a cork tape that we put underneath and then spiral it out, so you got ridges going into it.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. We've got the ridges that we're putting in ours. The cork tape that we're using is actually a pure cork tape. It's no rubberized cork. The rubberized cork is a little bit heavier. So we're using that just pure cork. We're getting it from our supplier. It's a little bit thinner, so it looks cool, and it doesn't add a bunch of weight to it. It actually hardly adds any weight to the rod because of the cork being, the cork's light anyways.
Yeah.
So we don't add that rubber into it like most say they got nowadays. It comes out a lot lighter, and it's pretty cool because everybody's like, oh, that's going to be heavy, because it's got that all in there. And you're like, they pick it up like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, we got our welder, or not our welder, but our cannon, 10-foot 1-to-4 cannon. It weighs right out at like 10.3 ounces, I think, built out.
Wow, cork and a heat shrink. That's really smart. I mean, it's like combining the two best parts of the rod with the grip piece, because I mean, your hand's going to be there the whole time, so you need something that's going to work well. But mixing those together, I can see how that texture would work out nice. Do you like using different guides, or is it like, hey, look, I only like using Fuji?
We're really basically, we don't deal with Fuji anymore, just for our own, purposes.
Yeah.
But what we do, like stainless steel, things like that, we will use on our production stuff. But on our surf or on our custom stuff, we do offer an upgrade, and we really do advise going with the titanium. Second, that's a really that's the biggest thing we like doing is using actually American tackle guides. They're the tie forged, just a kickback type guide. They have them in double foot and single foot runners or single foot guides. So we use those a lot, and we've had really good results out of the last, let me think how many years we've been using American tackle. We've been using American tackle exclusively for like the last 10 years.
Okay.
So, and the at one time we were getting some bad from other manufacturers, some bad stainless steel, and it was rusting out bad. Since then, those companies have actually stepped up their game and gotten better stainless steel. But since then, I went with American Tackle because they had a better, just right out of the box, they never had no issues, so we just stayed with them.
All these pieces putting together, you actually segue really nice on my next question. What considerations should be made when building a surf rod?
Just knowing what your grip length you want. That's the big thing. And we do a lot of, we do a lot of 10-footers, stuff like that, but we also do a lot of like 13-foot, what we call hat receiver rods. And say you're throwing 8 and bait, so you're going to be in that 10 to 12 ounce that you're really chunking on the beach. A lot of guys are like, well, I want a 22 inches from the the butt of the rod to the reel seat. And it's like, well, it's a 13-footer, and you're trying to throw 12 ounces out there, or 10 ounces. You've got to have some length on the rod, and we go pretty much on those deals that we got like 29.5 inches is from the butt of the rod to the reel seat. But our biggest thing is just making sure that you've got a long enough butt on it. And a lot of guys are like, hey, I want 33 inches because I really want to grab a hold of it.
In that box. But, I mean, the butt length does matter because I just recently learned this one from a friend of mine. He grabbed a rod, and he said, all right, hold the reel seat, now put the arm or the butt of the rod in your armpit.
Mm-hmm.
And then where your hand is. If you find that distance from where the butt is to your hand, if that grip is right there, that's pretty much your normal. That's your that's your good spot for your grip. So where I grabbed was different than where my buddy Justin grabs or where Mike grabbed. Everybody had a little bit of differences by 1 or 2 inches.
Right.
So if I'd gotten a rod that was right there, would that increase my distance? There's a chance, But on that same one, we're not talking 5-6 inches of differential there.
Right. And that's the thing, like a lot of guys that are getting into the Hatteras deal right now, since COVID hit, it really took off of fishing on the point at Cape Hatteras. It was a big deal back in the 70s and 80s and the 90s, early 2000s. That was really big days of surf fishing at Cape Hatteras. It went away. When COVID hit, they didn't have nothing else better to do, so they were going fishing. So that really took off. So we're getting a lot of new customers that come in and say, well, look, I got a 10-foot rod, and I've got 22 inches from the butt of the rod to my reel seat. I'm like, yeah, but you've also got a rod that's 13 foot. You got 3 more foot hanging on the end of it. You got to get that around. And, so you got to go ahead and get a little bit longer of a butt section. Me, personally, like on my 13-foot stuff, I really like to have my hand, like we use conventional. A lot of times we use conventional stuff in that heavy of a range of rods. Where my hand is to where the butt of the rod is, I like actually the butt of my 13-footers and stuff like that. I like to have it in the middle of my chest. Like my 10-footer, stuff like that, I like to do it into my armpit to my hand.
Well, how long? What did it take for you to find that one out for you, or is that just trial and error?
Trial and error.
Okay.
I did some stuff where I didn't glue up a reel seat. I just put it on and kind of had it where I could slide it up and down, but where it was stationary good, and I just started messing around with that. That's when we found that out. I was like, okay, this is where you get more distance out of it, where you got to grab it. When you're pulling at your left, say if you're throwing and you got your hand on the reel in your right hand. Say when you're pushing and pulling, you're pushing with your right hand in the reel part, but when you're pulling with your left hand, you want to have that leverage to where you can really just, at the same time of pushing and pulling and getting that rod to float up and to launch the bait. That's where it's all at.
Is there any rod that you would say is like, oh, that's going to be a difficult to make kind of setup?
Yeah. And
That's honest. I appreciate you right there. I was waiting for like, no, they're all good. I appreciate you right there. Like, yeah, there is.
well, I mean, we got some, we've got most rods are fairly, I've done it long enough where I know like what we're going to do and how we're going to figure it out. Um, some things like some people come up and they're like, I want all these colors, and they're like, we got like 10 colors. You're going to have so many colors on a rod. You're trying to get the customer to understand that, let's pull it down to like 5 colors. Then we can put it in the rod, because otherwise we're just going to have like a rainbow at this thing. Um, and you can't come up with no scheme on it. You know what I mean? It's all just randomly all over the place. So that's, and once customers see, they're like, okay, yeah, I see 5 colors looks better than the 10 I came up with. That works out really well. And our big thing is, for last, I don't know what it is here in the last few weeks, customers that call, and I've had several in the last about 3 months wanting anywhere from 16 to 20 foot rods. And,
What?
yeah, and I'm like, what? I'm like, most people, it's hard enough getting a 13 footer around. And then to go to the 14 footer, we do have some 14 foot stuff that we can get. There's several guys that wanted 18 and 20 footers the last 2 weeks. And I was like, do you know that like a telephone pole is like pretty much 20 foot? And like you've got pretty much a telephone pole is what you're going to be trying to cast. Like
Yeah.
unless you're Andre the Giant. I mean, he's like, well, I want to get distance. I'm like, well, that's not where you get distance. Like myself, and everybody's different. Myself, I can get 11 foot further out than a 13 footer. Personal preference and what a person's used to and how he can, get the speed into the rod itself. I can do an 11 footer better than I can do 13.
Well, I mean, the blank itself is one of the most important pieces. We did a rod demo day on the beach. Mike Smith and I, well, we also do the Panhandle Fishing Report. So we set up an event. We brought all our rods out plus some, and then we tried a couple of different rods. And there was one 13-foot rod that we tried out that we could effortlessly launch significant distance. So I compared that to my my Achios Fury rod. I have a 13-footer on there, and the difference was night and day. I could get more out of that rod than I did the Achios, and it turned out it was the blank. I didn't change anything with my torque or anything with my speeds or anything. I mean, hell, the reels were almost the same. But I think a lot of people forget that length is one thing, but the blank manufacturing, the way the blank is made, the way what is composite or composed of, that is where you get extra distance. Would you agree with that, or am I way off?
Yeah, and you are. And we went, like we're doing, our own line of rods, plus we're doing with night and day. It is light years away from everybody else's stuff, ahead of everybody's stuff, because the carbon in their blanks is just phenomenal. It's like we use their surf machines, Slingshots. Slingshots was several years ago. They came out with them like 10 years ago, really. But the Surf Machine Max, the Surf Machine blanks itself, they're a thicker wall blank, but it is so light and it just loads so easy that you see it. And the way they construct that blank, it's just a phenomenal rod. Now, yes, it costs top dollar. It's like the Fiari of fishing rods, but it is the top dog rod out there on the market right now. And you see it, like you say, it depends on whose it is and everything, and what the carbon content is, what its action of it is, and everything like that. That's the big deal. And Century has really took on being one of the best surf rods on the market right now that we can find. That's the top of the line.
Now
Yeah.
I want to see. I now I want to see a Century rod. I've never seen one. I'm gonna have to look it up when we're done.
Yeah, they're really. I mean, they are the Fiari. I mean, it's crazy how light they are, and like we're say, most guys, really going back into that new. Here in North Carolina, we've always fished with conventional stuff for drum, say, but the spinning stuff is always kind of frowned upon during the drum. Guys, actually, we're going back into that run now. Guys are going into getting spinning. So, like when you go to cast, the Century surf machines, they have a great, what they call the anti-torsional twist in the blank. So what it does is it holds the blank. Not only does the rod go back and forth when you're casting, when you go back to cast and you come hard when you're getting ready to cast and you're coming in with the power of that rod is wanting to twist around on you. So not only is it going back and forth, it's also twisting around back and forth. So what it does is you end up having a better cast because the rod's not sitting there doing 3 different motions at once. It's actually not just going back and forth and side to side. It's actually going out and not twisting up. So you get a better cast. It's all, every bit of the energy in that blank is just going back and forth and not side to side.
Wow. Dang, I didn't even think about that. All I see, you see the picture, you get that torque in there, you get that nice parabolic bend and that piece, but yeah, you took it up a whole nother notch there.
And you think, like, okay, so you got that spinning rod in your hand. So the least resistance for that line is wanting to go to the bottom side of that guide. So that guide is, whenever you're going in with your cast, it's wanting to turn and it's wanting to twist the top 180 degrees back to you. With those blanks, you don't have that problem in them at all. And
Wow.
so you get your distance out because the rod's not sitting there doing 10 different things and trying to put power into it. It's just going on and doing its own thing.
No kidding. How's the bite detection?
It is the way so you have no air pockets in your carbon at all. When they wrap those blanks and roll them and put them in the oven, they also put them in an oven that's actually vacuumed. So what it does is it sucks every bit of air out of there. So what it does is it actually pulls all the carbon right down to the mandrel. So you have no air pockets. So every bit of every piece of carbon is transmitting some type of vibration.
Oh, jeez. Wow. That's serious science right there. That's smart. We'll bring this in here. I don't want to take up your whole morning because, I could talk to you about this for hours. Get myself in trouble here. What do you wish people would know about why a custom rod is a good thing and not just a luxury?
The of the rod, like, not everybody's got the same length of arms or got the same amount of power. Getting to where the guides are laid out perfectly for it. The best thing is say a person comes in and says, I want a surf rod. Well, I'm like, the first question I always ask is what reel you're using on it. So then we can match that reel to that rod. So what it does is when we look at it and you look down from the reel, looking down, every reel has an angle to it on the spinning reel, say. It's got an angle of what that shaft and that spool is angled at. It's always angled down towards the rod a little bit. Every angle is different. There's not a set standard on reels across the board from manufacturers. So what we do is when we set up a rod, it is matched to that first guide, that stripping guide, and then all the way out. Every guide is like a bullseye. You look down it and it goes right down through, and then it goes into the runners. So when the line's going, it's shooting into it, and it's not, angled up another way, and it's trying to go up on the, the bottom side of the guide, or it's going in the top side of the guide. It's built exactly for that rod. In our deal too, on our custom stuff to what manufacturers doing out there, manufacturers are putting epoxy on that is setting up within 3 hours, because the faster they can get them epoxy out, rods set up, they can put them to the side, get another batch going again. Where ours, we'll run it, and most custom rod builders are looking for an epoxy that's not super hard brittle. We want it to have durability and we don't get all messed up looking over several years, but we also, and so 3 years down the road, the epoxy don't start chipping off the rod, right. Like the store-bought stuff.
All right, so last 2 questions for you here. What do you wish a brand new angler would do before they ever went out and started surfing?
Is learn how to read a beach. Just walk down the beach and kind of learn. Watch other people, see what they're doing. Certain people you're probably gonna watch here and be like, well, that guy don't know what he's doing no more than I do. But you can tell certain guys are in a certain hole, and you go talk to them. Say, hey, why are you fishing this way? I just want to know, because I'm learning. Don't be scared to ask questions, and that's the big thing. Because once a guy can go out there and go fishing, and you're like, okay, I'm at the beach, I'm ready to go fishing. But did you pick a good hole? Is there a cut here? Is there a slough here? Is there anything? Is it just a flat beach and you're trying to get over the bar? What's going on here? That's where you need to be asking yourself questions when you're starting out, because that dictates if you really enjoy surf fishing, or if it's just, I went out there and fished all day and didn't catch nothing, but the guy down 100 yards down the beach was catching them all day. I don't know why. There's a reason for that. Yep. And either bait different, or he's had fresher bait or whatever it may be, or he may be just in a good hole.
Right. Good call. Hey, so there you go. People learn from that one. So how do people get in touch with you? Or how do they find you to have a conversation about these rods and getting reel serviced, or hey, just knowledge in general?
You can call us on our business line there. You can also email us at motscustomrods@gmail.com. We like to do emails, obviously, because it helps out on the keeping a track of what's going on, and if there's any kind of changes that you came up with on a rod or anything like that. So we do like the emails. You can also find us on the Facebook or Instagram. But most of the time you can just go to our website, motscustomrods.com.
You gave me a lot of knowledge today, and I know a lot of people just gained a ton. And seriously, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future. I'm sure we absolutely will. And yeah, it's going to be great. So thank you again.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me on here today.
Yeah, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you go. Hopefully, you gained a lot of knowledge out of this episode because I know I did, especially in the reels portion. I understood reels a little bit, but I didn't understand as much as I feared I got now. And I feel really confident in my battles. So that always helps. Again, if you guys want, I highly recommend it. Reach out to Wes at motscustomrods@gmail.com. If you have questions, you can also find them on on Facebook, Instagram, as Mott's Custom Rods and Reels. And if you are in the market, I think you just heard some of the ones to get with, and you can obviously tell he's going to help you out there. So if this episode helped you, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and then go on over to Facebook and Instagram. Make sure you're following Mott's Custom Rods, like, share, and follow on those ones. It always helps. We help each other out. So thanks a lot for sticking around. Glad I had you here. Thanks for giving us the time. You've been listening to Finding Demo Surf Fishing. I will see you next week. Have a great one. Take care of yourselves. I am out of here.